Alright, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about electing a president, so let's do it. Alright, so first thing I want to say is that there is a lot that goes into electing a president. We're going to talk about both the primaries and the general election, the Electoral College. If you want a very detailed version of this, then check out the videos I have linked below in the notes. This is going to be a video that's going to focus on what the AP exam course curriculum outline is telling us that College Board wants us to focus on. So you're going to get the main important things, but if you want more detail, check out those other videos. Alright, so let's get right to it. One of the first things we want to talk about is that presidents have an incumbency advantage. Now, they can only be an incumbent once. By the way, that word incumbent is talking about the person who already holds office. Since there is an advantage, it means that they are more likely to win re-election than the challenger is to defeat them. Now, why is this? Well, we have a few reasons. One is that the person has already won office before, right? So they've already won a presidential campaign, so they kind of know how to do it. Along with that, they already have a network of volunteers, of contributors, they have a staff, they have all these things that help them to win again the next time. They also have command of the bully pulpit, where anything the president says or does is newsworthy, so they can generally steer the debate and they can focus on things that they want it to be focused on. And they are obviously very well known, and since they already are president, then they already are seen as presidential. Sometimes challengers have to fight that, where it's hard to imagine that person as president, but when the person is president, they're already presidential, so that's an easy thing down for them. Now, when we kind of back up to the process, we have a long campaign cycle. Usually after midterms, you'll see candidates start announcing that they are running for president. And so it takes about 2 years, really, this long cycle. We have like the invisible primary, where candidates haven't announced yet, but they are kind of in the background doing things like their benchmark polls and putting together a staff and starting to fundraise. Then you have the actual primaries, which takes about 6 months, the national convention. Then you have the general election, and you actually have somebody win the office. So let's kind of break these things down. Let's talk about the primaries. So again, this is where a candidate is being chosen to be that party's candidate for president. So if you win the primary, it doesn't mean you get to be president. It just means you are your party's candidate for president. So it starts in Iowa, typically in January or February, and then it goes through until about June, in which we have every single state is able to have their own primary. And different states run their primaries differently. Some states have what's known as an open primary. In an open primary, any registered voter is allowed to participate, even if they aren't a registered member of that particular party. So what that means in a state like Michigan, as long as you are a registered voter, you show up on primary day and they will ask you, are you participating in the Democratic Party primary or the Republican Party primary? And you answer, you receive a ballot for one of those two, not both, one or the other, and you vote for that party's primary. In a closed primary state, this is where you not only have to be registered, but you must be registered to that political party. So a state like Florida, voters must be registered to a party in order to participate. So they'll show up and you have to show not only that you are a registered voter, but that you are registered to the Democratic or the Republican primary. Otherwise, you cannot participate. Now, some states don't have primaries. Instead, they have caucuses, and Iowa is the main example of this. A caucus is a meeting of party members to choose a candidate. So the purpose is exactly the same as a primary. They're both to choose a party's candidate. In a caucus, however, instead of voting by secret ballot like you do in a primary, so a primary is just a regular election, in a caucus, you have where people come together and then they talk, they discuss, they debate, and they vote publicly as a group. Sometimes they vote by showing hands, sometimes they vote on pieces of paper, sometimes they vote by actually moving to physical areas of the room or like the gymnasium. Often these are in schools, so like high school gyms or cafeterias and theaters, stuff like that. But it's a more public thing. Some people argue this is true democracy in action, where you can actually try to win over the people who are there and convince them to come vote for the candidate that you like better. So that's the main difference between a primary and a caucus. So what happens next after the primaries and caucuses? Well, the candidate who has won the most delegates, which is what you win as a result of winning states in primaries and caucuses, so whoever wins the majority of delegates at the national convention, their party will officially nominate him or her as that party's candidate for president. Now we get to the general election. The general election is where the winner takes political office. So you actually get to be president if you win the general election. And the key feature of the presidential general election is the Electoral College. So citizens around the country get to vote for president, kind of. Like you go and you get to vote and you're voting for Trump or Hillary or Obama or Romney, whomever it is in 2020 or 2024, but you're technically not really voting for the candidate. We do not directly elect the president. Rather, you are voting for people from your state to represent you in the Electoral College. The Electoral College actually votes for the president, not the people. So the way that this is done is that each state has a certain number of electoral votes, and there are a total of 538 electoral votes. And at the end of the day, whichever candidate wins at least 270 electoral votes, that's a simple majority, that person will be president of the United States. So what happens is that in 48 of the 50 states, this is done on a winner-take-all basis. That means whichever candidate wins the most votes in a state wins all of the electoral votes from that state. So Florida has 29 electoral votes in the 2020 election. Whichever candidate wins more votes in Florida, even if it is by a single vote, one vote, it doesn't matter, they will win all of the electoral votes from the state of Florida. So this tremendously influences the strategy of candidates. This is going to cause them to focus on what's known as swing states or sometimes battleground states. These are states that have a large number of electoral votes and are competitive. So candidates don't focus on states like Texas, California, and New York typically because while they do have a large number of electoral votes, it's pretty well known that Texas is going to vote Republican, California and New York are going to vote Democratic, and again, since it doesn't matter how much you win or lose by, then your goal isn't to use your money and your resources on states that you already know you're going to win or lose. It's to focus on states like Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, the competitive states. Whoever wins these competitive states, they will most likely be president. And that's what happened in 2016. Donald Trump won Pennsylvania, he won Ohio, he won Michigan, he won Wisconsin, and he won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan by small amounts. But that's all you got to do. He won all the electoral votes from those states, and so he got to be president. So the last thing about the Electoral College I want to discuss here is a question. Does the Electoral College facilitate or impede democracy? That would be a great FRQ question, especially on an argumentative essay. So that's something for you to consider. Does it facilitate or impede? We have this winner-take-all feature. The popular vote doesn't matter, so you can win more votes overall and still lose the presidency. That happened to Hillary Clinton in 2016. It happened to Al Gore in 2000. So some people would argue that it is undemocratic. At the same time, others would argue that it maintains a geographic balance, so candidates can't only focus on like urban, densely populated areas. They have to worry about rural voters as well. Small states matter, and they really wouldn't matter so much if we went by a popular vote. So there are arguments on both sides of this issue. Again, this is something you want to think about and be ready to write about on an FRQ. Until next time, this has been a La Money production. Alright guys, thanks again for watching this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Help me out, hit that like button. Help me to spread these videos to other AP Gov students. I really do appreciate all the support you keep giving me. Thanks so much. I'll see you guys in the next video.